Hey Young Turks, this is Nomi Konst here in Baltimore, where the final official DNC Futures Forum just took place. We have one of the candidates for chair, Jamie Harrison. He is the chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party. Hello again.
Hello, it's good seeing you again.
On the road together.
Thank you for being at all of these forums and reporting. You've just done a great job, and we really appreciate it. We appreciate the coverage, and I know that sometimes everybody doesn't agree with everything that's going on, but it's important that everybody understands this process, sees this process, and feel like they're a part of it. And I think you've been so good at going behind the scenes so that people can get a sense of how this is done, because a lot of people just don't know. I didn't know until I got involved into the party years ago, so I think it's a good job that you're doing, and I wish more of the networks would have been doing this as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think, one of the reasons why we thought it was so important was there were so many of our viewers are new to the political process because of the last election. And of course, there hasn't been a contentious DNC chair race in about a decade. So this is a new process for a lot of folks, and to understand the dynamics and the rules of the DNC. And so, this is the final DNC forum, and it was large, it was well attended. A lot of conversation about process. I'm going to ask you just some very simple questions about that. And I'm glad you start off this way. What on earth happens on February 25th?
Yeah, we were trying to figure that out ourselves. So as Democrats, a lot of this is rules through evolution and process through evolution. I can even tell you back in South Carolina, if you look at our rules as a party, you have to have one man, one woman, and one person has to be of a different race, another person has to be of different gender, and so it's a process and a lot of reaction to things that have happened in the past in which the party hasn't been open. So we're trying to find ways that people can be inclusive and be involved. And so sometimes for new people it can be clunky, but there's a lot of history behind why things are done, and I think it's important for folks to also get a sense of what that history is before we say, well, we shouldn't do that. Well, sometimes the reason why it was there is because people were excluded, and they were trying to find ways to make people included. So as it relates to this process of this vote, it's going to take place on February 25th in Atlanta, and for the chair's race, I can speak specifically. It will be, we'll have a number of ballots. On the first ballot, if somebody doesn't have the majority, then it will go to a second ballot. And then after the second ballot, if someone doesn't have the majority, then the lowest vote getter is dropped off, and then it goes to a third ballot. So this could be, with 10, 11 candidates, and we don't know what the final number is going to be. It could be a long, drawn-out process. Now, say, for instance, there's one ballot, and two ballots, and two people have 10 votes, and they're the lowest. Then both of those people drop off. So it's a very convoluted process. Each candidate will get 10 minutes for speeches. Either they give their speech themselves or nominating speeches. You're allowed 4 people on the floor. So it's a very, very detailed process. It's convoluted in many ways. It's been something that has evolved over time. But I think people left the briefing feeling as though they understood what the parameters are for how the vote will be conducted.
How many members are there that vote?
So there are 447 members, and so you got to get 224 votes in order to win.
There are, like you said, several candidates in the race right now. Do they have to do anything to get on the ballot?
Yes. So you have to submit a petition signed by, I believe it's 20 or 21 DNC members in order to get on the ballot. Now, a DNC member can sign more than one petition. So one of the things that I did today was Sam Ronan, who was probably the youngest person running for DNC chair. He needed one more person to sign. And we probably wouldn't have gotten that opportunity because this is the last regional forum, and so I signed his ballot so he could get on. I mean, Sam's is a great guy, young guy that brings a lot of good ideas and a lot of passion, and I felt he needed to be a part of it. So.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because he did mention that on stage, and he mentioned that you were very inclusive, and this has been a race that talks a lot about these issues. Of course, it played out in the primary. There were some questions about inclusivity and a lot of rules that need to be changed. Yeah. Today's forum, the conversation that really struck me that started to pop out, as opposed to all the other ones, was about how the DNC had sort of been at odds with OFA, Organizing for America. And
I've talked about that, Listen, I love President Obama. I think everybody in this party loves President Obama. And I worked as hard as I possibly could in order to get him elected. The problem is that after he got elected, OFA continued. At the same time, we still had the Democratic National Committee. And so, you know, you can't have two organizations talking to the same people, going after the same donors, doing similar type things, and think that that won't have an impact on one of the organizations or not. So, you know, coming off of that election, the DNC absorbed the debt from the presidential campaign, but at the same time now it has less resources to dedicate to the 50-state strategy. So the amount of money that we had going into 2006 and 2008 that was dedicated to having boots on the ground in the state, that was dropped significantly. So many of those state parties then didn't have the 3 or 4 staffers that they once did in order to build their grassroots operation, in order to talk to voters, to keep people engaged. And as a result, we suffered. We started losing on the state level. We lost state house races, we lost governorships, we lost attorney general's races. And so the thought of bringing that organization back and having all of these other organizations doing very similar things, it's just hard, given that we know that state parties are in such bad shape at this point in time.
So who right now is actually arguing for OFA to continue to...
Well, I'm assuming the president wants it to, the former president wants it to come back. I've seen a number of news stories about that. And again, it's not, we all love the president, but we all know that the DNC and the state parties are broken. So let's fix them. Because if you're going to get on the ballot, you're going to have to get on the ballot under the Democratic label. If you're going to run for a candidate, so let's fix it. If we all know it's broken, let's fix it. And let's not get another organization to replicate some of the things when it just can't do that. And I've said this before, that a lot of people are starting various organizations. Those organizations are only going to last as long as those personalities are on the field. The Democratic Party has been here, it's going to be here. And so therefore, let's invest in that and make it what we want it to be. And so if we want it to be this, and for me, it is changing it from just being a political organization that asks for votes every 2 or 4 years to being a community organization that is helping people address the issues in their lives. That's what we've been trying to do in South Carolina. I started an initiative called Democrats Care, where we actually go into communities, figure out what are some of the issues that they're dealing with, and we try to solve them, or at least address them and help people in the process. That's really, really important. Community service and service to others is really important, because I fundamentally believe that you don't have to be in power in order to empower people.
So you chair a state, South Carolina, notably very Republican.
Yep.
Every state has their own set of issues. You know,
Yes.
Some states have absolutely no money on hand and haven't been given anything, any tools. They don't even have executive directors. I just heard in Nebraska.
Yeah.
And the chair doesn't get paid.
I don't get paid either.
So
It's a volunteer
how do you choose, you know, if you start raising money and you become DNC chair, how do you choose which states get priorities over others?
Well, I don't think it's states giving priorities. I think you set a standard for every state, every territory is going to get X, Y, and Z, right? In terms of money, every state should have training. I mean, people don't even realize, you know, I think most people think about the party and say, well, it must be like, say, McDonald's, right? Where there's a national headquarters, and then you have all these franchises, and then there's a set training and all of the stuff that takes place, and it comes from the national headquarters, and that's what happens in each individual. It doesn't happen that way. It is a very I don't want to say disorganized, but maybe that's the word. It's a very nebulous sort of relationship between state parties and the DNC, and that fundamentally needs to change. There needs to be a standard in terms of the training that DNC members, that state party chairs, vice chairs, executive directors, and the staff all have. We used to have that with Howard Dean as chair in the 50-state strategy, but when that went away, then that set of standards also went away as well. So we really have to move from that and change that.
I've asked you this question in different ways in the past, but I just keep hearing it over and over and over when I talk to members. What role do these major consulting groups have in centralizing the DNC, keeping the DNC centralized?
You know, that's good. Good question. I think consultants would benefit from having a stronger DNC in terms of actually state parties who can function, right, and who can actually go out and train candidates, recruit candidates, and then they can work with those candidates once they're there. But right now, state parties don't have capacity. I mean, it is hard for them to just do the simplest things. And so, I mean, I think right now there are a lot of consultants who get big, TV contracts and all the like. One, I think we spend too much money in that. I mean, TV ads are important. I'm not saying that you don't have them. I just don't think they're the most important thing. And so we need to change that mentality. I also think with the consultants need to start reflecting the diversity within our party. I mean, it's just sad that you have folks who draft ads for African American audiences, but there's no African Americans that work at the firm. So.
Well, Jamie, any other last thoughts? As we enter the final stretch here.
Well, the thing that I would say to folks, listen, I know that a lot of people have lost trust and faith in the Democratic Party, and we got to work to rebuild that. And I say to folks, sit back, evaluate, see what the party does, and then evaluate whether or not you can trust the party once again. But it's really, really important that all of us who are involved on whatever level pick up the strings, admit the wrongs that were done, and figure out how we all get back together, because that's so key and so important. Because if we can't do that, as I've told people many times, that one side or the other might win the battle, but we all lose the war, because we get stuck with Donald Trump and this rubber stamp Republicans. And the thing that scares me more than anything is if they pick up more governorships, and if they pick up more seats in the Senate to get to 60 votes, where they have a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate, and they can change the Constitution because of all of the control they have in the states. That is why I have been saying that no state can be left behind, that we have to make sure that we invest in all of them.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you, guys.